This now leads us to the next statement of Imam al-Tahawi, rahimahullahu ta'ala. And so the next statement is, Wallahu ta'ala yastajibu ad-da'awat wa yaqdi al-hajat. The meaning of which is, Allah the Most High, He responds to the supplications. He responds to the supplications. Wa yaqdi al-hajat. And He answers the needs. He answers the needs of the people. The needs of the people. Now we'll start with Sheikh Zayd al-Madkhali rahimahullah ta'ala. He has a brief comment upon this, and so he says, in truth, Allah Azza wa Jal alone, He is the one who responds to the call of anyone who calls upon Him. And this is because of His fadl, His bounty, His favor, and His ihsan, the fact that He is benevolent, and likewise His rahmah, His mercy. So from His mercy, from His benevolence, from His fadl, His bounty, is that He will respond to the one who calls upon Him. And Allah is the one who removes the hardships of the people, and who removes the anxieties of the people, of His servants. Just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said in the Quran, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Surah 40 verse number 60. Surah Ghafir 40 verse number 60. And your Lord has said, call upon me, invoke me, and I shall respond to you. Right? So here this is the evidence for this point. Al-Tahawi said that Allah the Most High responds to the supplications. He fulfills the needs. And here Allah says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Your Lord has said, call upon me and I shall respond to you. So here Allah commanded with making dua. He commanded with dua, and He also promised the response. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Call upon me and I shall respond to you. Now when a person calls upon his Lord, he asks Him for the good things in this life, the good things in the hereafter. Then when he makes this dua, it is upon him to be certain, to have yaqeen. When he makes this dua, he does it whilst having certainty in his heart, anticipating the answer from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not to do it like in a half-hearted way, because this is one of the ways that, which strengthens the supplication and the likelihood of it being answered. Now, if a person makes dua to Allah for something and he finds that the thing is not coming, and this should not concern him, because he should not despair, he should not worry, he should not have like an evil opinion. Like you see many people who are weak in iman, you find them saying, I made dua to Allah for so long, and it's been months and months and for years and years, and I still have these calamities, and I still have this illness, and I still have this pain. I'm having all these trials come to me in my family, my children, my wealth, and Allah is not responding to me. All of this person, as we shall see from the rest of the explanation and the rest of the commentary from Sheikh Zayd and from Sheikh Salih as well, that this person really is of weak faith, and he's really having an evil opinion of his Lord. Rather, he should make dua with yaqeen. Ud'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijabah. As we see the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, call upon Allah whilst you are certain of the response. Now, how do we understand this? Well, Allah Azza wa Jal, He never causes the action of any person to go to waste. Any of the people of Tawheed, the people who are sincere, the people who do actions correctly upon the Sunnah, even the dua that they are making, which they might think is not being answered, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without them even knowing it, there is something of benefit for him in that dua that he's making, which he may not even actually recognize or see. So when a person makes a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with certainty and with all the conditions, then there's a number of situations. Either Allah Azza wa Jal will hasten whatever he asked for to him. So he asks for something in the life of this world, he asks for something in the hereafter, Allah hastens that thing to him, so he answers his dua and that thing comes to him. Or if he does not specifically answer that request, that specific request, then he may repel some evil or harm from him. Right? So your dua never got answered, or your dua is not being answered, but you do not know that Allah has repelled from you certain evil or a certain degree of evil that would have otherwise come to you. But he made that dua that you made, which he hasn't yet answered, to be a sabab, a means of repelling other evil from you. But obviously you may not even recognize that. Or, thirdly, Allah may save the reward of that person for the hereafter. So in other words, rather than give him what he's asking for in his dua with respect to the affairs in this life, so he might be asking for, whatever things in the life of this world, Allah's not giving it to him. But what Allah will do is to reserve and to preserve that and to store the reward of that away so that he will get it on Yawmul Qiyamah. Meaning he will get better than what he asked for on Yawmul Qiyamah than what he was asking for in the life of this world. So here we can see, and of course on Yawmul Qiyamah, this is the time when a person is most in need of having his good deeds wipe away his evil deeds. So that's when he needs the good deeds the most. So if Allah is storing away, not answering in the life of this world and storing it away, that's for the benefit of the servant. Just as when he repels evil from a servant without answering his dua directly and quickly, that's for the benefit of the servant. Right? So from all of these considerations, it's not possible for any person, permissible for any person to make dua to Allah and then start despairing. No matter how long that might be. Because he does not know in what way Allah has responded to his dua in any of the ways that we mentioned. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah always responds to the dua of the one who is compelled, the one who is in a hardship. He says in Surah Al-Naml, أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Who is the one who calls upon the one who is mudtar, the one who is like in hardship, in difficulty, when he calls upon him, and the one who removes the evil from him. Surah Al-Naml, Surah 27, verse number 62. 27, verse number 62. The answer to this is no one but Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And in fact, as a side point, this is one of the verses here that is used, alluded to by some of the scholars, that this is a proof of Allah's existence, a proof against the atheists, because when you find an atheist, when you find him in a situation where he's about to die, and you find that there is no other possible means or ways that he can survive because there is no one around to save him. There are no there's no asbab. There are no ways and means. There's no worldly created ways and means that he can see around him that will actually save him. Right? So basically, he knows that he's basically doomed. So, but what happens is that in his heart is actually trying to turn to something, or hoping or wishing. And even though he's not making dua or invoking to Allah, but his heart is reaching out to something with the hope that if only something is here or something is there by which I can be saved, right? Alongside his knowledge that there's absolutely nothing that can save him, because there are no ways and means. There's no, if he's drowning, there's no, piece of flotsam or wood on the ocean. If he's, going to be devoured by a lion in a cage, there's nothing. He knows there's no other possible ways or means present for him by which he can survive, right? So all of the asbab are gone, right? Rationally, there's nothing that's there that can save him. Despite all of that, in his heart, even though it might not, might not be saying, "Oh Allah, save me," but his heart is moving and trying to turn to something, with the hope and anticipation that he might be saved, right? But if he was truthful in believing that, well, there's nothing out there, then his heart wouldn't react like that, and he would just submit and think, well, okay, I'm going to die. right? But sometimes they actually do say that, well, I'm going to die anyway. But in the heart, there is still that feeling. In the heart, there is like, it's trying to hope that if only there was something, and it's trying to reach out to something. So this is anyway a side point here, that some of the scholars, they mention this as one of the evidences for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in that the hearts do turn to Him in the time of calamity and certain death and so on and so forth. So, but this ayah here, أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرِّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ, this here, the answer to this is yes, of course, there is no one but Allah who responds to the one who makes dua to Him. And likewise, the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. When my servants ask you concerning me, then I answer, then I am close, and I answer the call of the one who calls upon me when he calls upon me. So let them respond to me and let them believe in me in order that they may be guided aright. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, verse 186. 186. And so all of this is from the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal, in that He has commanded us to make dua to Him. He's promised us to make a response. And He's promised us that when any hardship or calamity comes to us in our deen, in our dunya, in our religion or the world, and that when we turn to Him with dua and we humble ourselves, that Allah will certainly, He will remove that hardship. And whatever hardship has come to us. And so this we find in many examples in the Quran. An example of this is Salatul Istisqa, the prayer for rain. Likewise, Dua al-Istikhara, that a person makes for advice from Allah, for basically direction from Allah Azza wa Jal, consultation and direction from Allah Azza wa Jal with respect to his needs. And likewise, the various other du'as that we are commanded to make in the certain times, then all of this is beneficial for the servant. So this is Sheikh Zaid, and we'll go here now to the speech or the commentary of Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. And so the Sheikh comments upon the saying of At-Tahawi, Wallahu Ta'ala yastajibu ad-da'awati wa yaqdi al-hajat. So he says that this is from the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, that He answers the supplication of His servants. When the servants call upon Him, He answers their supplications. And he mentions the ayah, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةِ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. When my servants ask you concerning me, then I am close. I respond to the supplication of the supplicant when he supplicates. And He also commanded us to make dua to Him. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. The same ayah that we mentioned earlier. And your Lord has decreed, call upon me, I shall respond to you. And likewise the same ayah, أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Who is the one who responds to the one who is compelled in hardship and difficulty when he calls upon Him and removes the evil. So the Shaykh mentions these ayat as examples in where there is a command to call upon Allah. And all of this is from Allah's generosity, His benevolence, His nobility, that He commands a servant to call upon Him so that He Himself can respond to His servant. Despite the fact that Allah is not in need of anyone, calling upon Him, He's not in need of, any of this from His servants, but because of His knowledge of their needs, Allah knows of their needs, then He has commanded them to make dua to Him so that their needs can be fulfilled. And so in the hadith, the Shaykh alludes to a hadith in which it is related, مَنْ لَا يَسْأَلُ اللَّهِ يَغْضَبْ عَلَيْهِ. Whoever does not call upon Allah, Allah becomes angry with him. And in another hadith, الدُّعَاء هُوَ الْعِبَادَةِ. Supplication is worship. So all of this indicates the importance of dua, and that Allah is the answerer of a person's dua. Now this dua that we make to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, this dua is to be made and directed only to Allah Azza wa Jal. And ishraq, which is sharing, calling upon others besides Allah, is strictly forbidden. It is shirk with Allah. Allah says, وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. Indeed, the mosques are the places of worship and prostration are only for Allah. And so do not invoke alongside Allah anyone. قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَدْعُو رَبِّي وَلَا أُشْرِكُ بِهِ أَحَدًا. Say, I call only upon my Lord, and I do not associate any partners with him. Surah Al-Jinn, Surah 20, Surah number 72, verse number 20, that is. And the ayah before it, Surah Jinn, verse number 18. Surah 72, verse number 18. وَمَنْ يَدْعُ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ لَا بُرْهَانَ لَهُ بِهِ فَإِنَّمَا حِسَابُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Whoever invokes another deity alongside Allah, he has no proof for that, and his reckoning will be with his Lord. Indeed, Allah does not cause the disbelievers to prosper. Surah Al-Mu'minun, Surah 23, verse 117. So all of these ayat indicate that calling upon other than Allah is not permissible. Anyone who does so is a mushrik, irrespective of who he calls upon. An angel, a prophet, a wali, a righteous person, dead or living. He has associated partners with Allah with a shirkul akbar. And this person is misguided. وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ مِمَّنْ يَدْعُو مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ مَنْ لَا يَسْتَجِيبُ لَهُ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ وَهُمْ عَنْ دُعَائِهِمْ غَافِلُونَ. Who is more astray than the one who calls upon those besides Allah, the one who will not answer him till the day of judgment, whilst they are heedless of his supplication. And then the Shaykh goes on to mention some other ayat in the Quran, all of which refute the shirk and invoking others besides Allah, and showing that it is futile, and that these people, that whoever is called upon will not be able to answer. And so this also shows to us here that the dua of those who call upon the prophets and the righteous, like those who call upon Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, those who call upon Ali from the Rafida Shia and other than them, the Brailwis and other than them, those who invoke others alongside Allah Azza wa Jal, then they are committing shirk with Allah. And as for any of their dua that appears to them to be answered, it is not being answered because they made the dua, because that dua is batil. It is shirk with Allah Azza wa Jal. And so that is just something that coincides with the qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is one of the issues that our scholars mention, that how do we explain the fact that, maybe even some of the disbelievers, or even some of the that they receive things from the qadr of Allah, and they appear to be calling upon Isa alayhi salam, they appear to be calling upon their deities, they appear to be worshipping their gods, they appear to be worshipping, and they're calling upon these deities besides Allah, and it appears that their du'as are being answered. Well, the answer here is that dua is not being answered by Allah Azza wa Jal, because that is shirk. Rather, it just so happens that what they are receiving is coinciding with al-qadr. Allah decreed that these affairs will come to them at the appointed times, but they have simply been deceived into thinking that their shirk is acceptable to Allah because they abandoned the misguidance. Whereas for the believer, the muwahhid, when he makes dua to Allah, and it is done with ikhlas and upon the sunnah and upon tawheed, and so as we said before, Allah will respond in a number of different ways. So when something does come to him, then he can say that, inshallah ta'ala, Allah responded to his dua, and his dua was a sabab for him receiving what he received. Because qadar, dua is part and parcel of al-qadar. Right? Allah brings things to you by way of dua. It is part and parcel of al-qadar. But as for the mushrik, as for the kafir, the disbeliever, and other than them who invoke their deities and worship other than Allah, and call for things and ask for things, and we see that they are being saved and they get relief and they receive the benefits of the world and so on and so forth, then this is just, it coincides with al-qadr. It did not happen because their dua was answered, because their dua is futile, it is batil, is not acceptable, not accepted by Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, the Shaykh then goes on to explain that dua is of two types. When we look at dua, there are two types of dua. There is dua which we call the dua of ibadah. Dua of ibadah and dua of mas'ala. These are the two types of dua as explained by the scholars of Ahlul Sunnah. What do we mean by these two? Dua of ibadah simply means any type of worship in which we are making mention of Allah's name, mentioning Allah's praising Allah, praising for His names, praising Him for His attributes, praising for His actions, such as what, for example, when we make tasbih, we say Subhanallah, we say Alhamdulillah, we say Allahu Akbar, we say La ilaha illallah. All of this it's a type of invocation, a supplication by which we are praising Allah. This is called du'a'ul ibadah. It is a type of du'a. And so in other words, when we are engaged in any type of worship, that worship is considered to be du'a. From the angle that if you think about what you're doing, you're not verbally asking anything from Allah. You're not verbally asking from Allah. But the mere fact that you are performing this act of worship or making this dhikr or praising Allah, obviously by doing it, you are anticipating something from Allah. So even though you're not verbally saying, oh Allah, give me such and such, but by your action, you are basically anticipating something from Allah. So basically, you are making dua by way of your ibadah. Right? So this isn't like the verbal dua that we make. So this is what we call du'a'ul ibadah. You are kind of calling upon Allah by way of your acts of worship. This is du'a'ul ibadah. As for the second type of dua, the one that we commonly know, du'a'ul mas'ala. This is when we are asking Allah something specific verbally. Right? So here we ask Allah to fulfill our needs. We ask Allah for protection. We ask Allah to repel harm. We ask Allah for the benefit of this life, of the hereafter. Here now we are specifically asking verbally for certain things. And so now these are the two types of dua. And that's why you will understand why in the Quran, the issue of dua, in all the places where it mentions like to do with tawheed and shirk, you find often it's dua that is being used, the word of dua. Not to invoke others besides Allah, to invoke only Allah alone, dua. Because the dua here, what we are speaking of, is with both of these meanings. Dua of ibadah and the dua of mas'ala. And that's why dua is from the greatest forms and types of worship, because with dua, there are so many other elements which are attached to it, of inward feelings, inward acts of worship. So that's why the issue of dua is so great in the Quran. Now, so these two types of dua we find actually mentioned in the Quran. In fact, in Surah Al-Fatiha. So when we begin Surah Al-Fatiha, the first half is du'a'ul ibadah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa Iyyaka nasta'een. Up until this point, all of this is du'a'ul ibadah. We are praising Allah, extolling Allah. And then the second half of the surah is du'a'ul mas'ala. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. Path of those upon whom you have favored. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ. Not of those upon whom is your anger and who are astray. So Al-Fatiha is du'a'ul ibadah and du'a'ul mas'ala. And one necessitates the other, one is connected to the other. So du'a'ul mas'ala is tied to du'a'ul ibadah and vice versa. Now this goes to our next point that the Shaykh mentions, which is the issue of calling upon Allah and not being answered. And so the Shaykh addresses this issue as well, and he mentions a really nice benefit. And this is so when a person calls upon Allah Azza wa Jal and he has not received a response. And someone might say, well, I called upon Allah, Allah didn't respond to me. And so the Shaykh says, وَالْجَوَابُ أَنْ يُقَالْ الْمَانِعْ مِنْ عِنْدِكَ أَنْتِ. He says that the thing which prevented the dua from being answered has actually come from you. The barrier to your dua being answered is actually with you. It is not with Allah Azza wa Jal. A dua is a means amongst the means. When the dua is used, it is one of the means by which the effect is achieved. But why isn't the result or the effect being achieved? Why isn't it? And the answer is that when there are barriers which are present which should be removed, then it means that the dua will not be answered. And sometimes that might be barriers which are present with you. For example, you might be calling upon Allah, but your heart really is not into the dua. Your heart is not really firm. Your heart, you don't really have yaqeen, certainty in Allah's response. Your heart is just half-hearted. It is not firm. It is not turning to Allah Azza wa Jal. And really the heart is ghafil, lahin. It is heedless. And another reason could be, as we see in the hadith, that a person is eating haram, drinking haram, wearing that which is haram. Right? So he's eating from that which is haram, wearing that which is haram, drinking from that which is haram, meaning wealth or clothing or drink or food which has been attained by unlawful means. By unlawful means. Mentioned the hadith about the man who goes on a long journey, his hair is disheveled, he turns his hands to the sky, he says, "Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, oh my Lord." Yet his food is haram, his clothing is haram, his nourishment is with haram. How then will he be answered? How can he be answered? So, this is another reason, another barrier why his dua is not being answered. A third reason is that he could be calling upon Allah for something which is sinful. Like he could be calling upon Allah to cut off the ties of kinship. This is haram. You cannot make dua for things which are haram. And, so from this angle he will not be answered. So this is the first angle as to why a person's dua will not be answered. There is a barrier amongst the barriers which is coming from him himself. It is not with Allah. Because Allah has promised, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Your Lord has said, call upon me and I will respond to you. So he made the command and he promised the response. But with everything there are the conditions have to be present and the barriers have to be removed. So here the barriers are coming from you. So that's one angle. And the second angle is that Allah Azza wa Jal is more aware of what is in your interest. Allah is more aware of what is beneficial to you in your circumstances. And so upon that knowledge, He may hasten that response to you, or He might delay that response to you. He might hasten or He might delay that response to you. Or He might remove some harm from you. He might remove some evil from you which might have come to your way but you are not aware of. Right? So here are the same three possibilities that Sheikh Zayd al-Madkhali mentioned in his explanation. So either Allah will hasten the response to you, or He will delay the response, or He will remove some evil from you without you even knowing, without your dua being answered. And we see that in the hadith, there is no man, ما من رجل يدعو الله بدعوة ليس فيها إثم ولا قطيئة رحم إلا أعطاه بها إحدى ثلاث. There is no man who calls upon Allah with the supplication except, in which there is no sin or cutting off of ties, meaning he's not making dua for something haram, except that Allah will give him one of three things. Either He will hasten to respond to his dua, or He will delay responding to his dua, or He will remove or turn away some evil from him that is equivalent to what he was supplicating for. So this hadith now makes it clear, the basis of what was said by Sheikh Zayd and Sheikh Saleh here, that a dua may not be answered, or when a person makes a dua, Allah may hasten to answer it, or He may delay it and give you the reward for it on Yawm al-Qiyamah, or He may remove some evil from you which is equivalent to the thing that you were making dua for. And finally the Shaykh finishes by saying that there are some people of misguidance who raise the question, well, if things are decreed to us anyway, why make the dua? There's no need to make dua, because if something is decreed, it's going to come to you anyway. And if Allah has not decreed for something and you made dua for it, it will not come to you anyway. So whether you make dua or whether you don't make dua, the thing is basically the same. It makes no difference. And the Shaykh says this is misguidance. This is misguidance. It is opposed to the speech of Allah Azza wa Jal. The answer to this is, as we mentioned, that Allah has made dua to be a sabab. Allah has made dua to be a cause and a means. It is exactly the same as Allah Azza wa Jal making food as a means of removing your hunger, and water as a means of removing your thirst, right? These are worldly affairs, right? These are the ways and means by which Allah has decreed certain things, certain effects. You feel thirsty, drink some water. The water will remove that thirst. You feel hungry, eat some food, and the food will remove your hunger. You desire to have children, then you need to get married. Allah has made marriage and relations as a means of children. So everything in the dunya has ways and means. You would be foolish if you thought that you can have children without marriage and relations. You would be foolish if you think that your hunger will be removed without eating food. Because the argument is the same. It's like you saying, well, if Allah has decreed that my hunger will be removed, what's the point eating then? There's no need for me to eat. If Allah has decreed that my thirst will go away, what's the point in me drinking water then? Because it's going to go away anyway. And we know that this is foolishness. And in a similar way, Allah has made for the benefits in the hereafter and the reward in the hereafter and repelling harm in this life, He has made dua as a sabab, supplication as a sabab. So when you call upon Allah and you say, oh Allah, guide me to such and such, or repel such and such from me, or grant me such and such, that dua that you have made is one of the asbab, one of the ways and means through which Allah has decreed that whatever is going to come to you is going to come to you. So you have to take the ways and means. You have to adopt the ways and means. There are those which relate to the world, as we mentioned, and there are those that relate to the Sharia and to the benefits in the world and benefits in the hereafter. And from them is dua, and in fact from them is all of the righteous actions. Every righteous action, al-amal al-salih, is a sabab, is a means from the means of you entering into paradise and achieving the good in this life and the next. So the person who says this is a foolish person who says why make dua? Why make dua? What this person is really trying to say is to invalidate worship. Right? So this is futile, this is false, this is incorrect. There's no contradiction between making dua and between the qadar of Allah Azza wa Jal. And so dua is simply a sabab, and Allah has tied things to asbab, to the ways and means, and dua is from amongst them. And so with that ends the commentary of the Shaykh, and with that we conclude our lesson there for today. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.